Her heart stopped. Her fingers froze over the delete button. Because that one view? It belonged to someone called D. Marconi, a name she didn't recognize, a contact she'd never saved, and according to the timestamp, someone who'd watched all 14 minutes and 37 seconds of the most private, vulnerable moment she'd ever recorded. The video wasn't supposed to exist outside her phone. It was her therapy, her midnight confessional, the raw documentation of everything she'd survived in the past 6 months. And now it was in the hands of a complete stranger. But let's rewind. Because 3 hours earlier, Mia Thornton's life was already falling apart in ways that made a mistaken upload feel almost cosmically appropriate. The beginning of the end. The email arrived at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 6 months after Mia had walked across that graduation stage alone. Dear Ms. Thornton, we regret to inform you that your application for the Junior Marketing Associate position has been declined. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Rejection number 43. Mia stared at her laptop screen in the cramped studio apartment she could barely afford, the walls so thin she could hear her neighbor's television through the drywall. Her graphic design degree, the one she'd earned with a 3.9 GPA, working 3 jobs simultaneously, sleeping 4 hours a night, was apparently worth less than the paper it was printed on. She thought about calling someone. Her best friend, Maya, was in Paris for a semester abroad, living the life Mia had once dreamed about. Her college roommate, Sarah, had gotten engaged last month and was too wrapped up in wedding planning to notice Mia's texts going unanswered. So Mia did what she'd been doing for months. She opened her phone's camera, positioned it on the stack of unpaid bills on her desk, and hit record. Day 183 of being a complete disappointment, she said to the camera, her voice cracking slightly. Rejection 43 just came in. I'm starting to think my parents were right about me. Her parents. The ones who didn't show up to her graduation because, as her mother had said during that final phone call, we're not going to celebrate mediocrity, Mia. When you do something actually impressive, maybe we'll consider flying out. She'd walked across that stage with her head high and her heart shattered, accepting her diploma while scanning the crowd for faces that were never coming. In the video, Mia talked about everything. The student loans crushing her monthly budget. The job applications she'd customized and perfected, only to be met with automated rejections. The way her childhood bedroom had been converted into her mother's yoga studio within 2 weeks of her leaving for college, a not-so-subtle message about where she ranked in the family hierarchy. She talked about her younger brother, the golden child who'd gotten a full-ride athletic scholarship to an Ivy League school. About how her father introduced him as my son, the Princeton athlete, and her as Mia, she does something with computers. 14 minutes and 37 seconds of raw, unfiltered truth. When she finished, she felt marginally better, lighter, somehow, like she'd transferred the weight of her failures onto something external. She saved the video to her phone, intending to delete it in the morning when she felt less emotionally volatile. Except instead of saving it to her camera roll, her exhausted, stressed-out brain had somehow selected the upload to cloud option. The one that automatically shared with recent contacts for easy collaboration. And the video had gone to D. Marconi. Mia's first 7 messages were pure panic. Oh my god, wrong upload, please delete that immediately, I am so sorry, this is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me, please pretend you never saw that, I'm begging you, I will literally pay you to forget this exists. She waited. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 15. Nothing. Maybe they were asleep. Maybe they'd already deleted it. Maybe they were a decent human being who understood that accidents happened and privacy mattered. Then her phone buzzed. Your parents are idiots. And you're worth more than 43 rejections. Mia's blood turned to ice water, then boiling rage, then something she couldn't quite identify. She typed back with shaking fingers, who is this? How did I even get your contact information? The response came quickly this time. You grabbed the wrong phone at Cafe Bellini last month. We swapped numbers so I could return yours. You never deleted me from your contacts. Cafe Bellini. The coffee shop where she worked part-time, supplementing her non-existent design income with minimum wage and occasional tips from regulars who pitted her obvious financial struggle. Mia vaguely remembered that morning, the breakfast rush chaos, 2 phones with identical black cases, the frantic mix-up with a customer she'd never actually looked at properly because she'd been too stressed about being 30 seconds behind on orders. "I don't know you," she typed. "And you just watched the most private moment of my life. Please delete it." "Already deleted. But I needed you to know something first." "What?" "You're not a disappointment. You're just surrounded by people who can't recognize value when they see it." Mia stared at the message, something painful and warm expanding in her chest. "You don't know me," she repeated, but with less conviction this time. "I know you worked 3 jobs through college. I know you graduated with honors in a field you're passionate about. I know you've been rejected 43 times and you're still applying for number 44. That's not mediocrity, Mia. That's resilience." Her name. He'd used her name, which meant he'd actually watched the video, actually listened. "Why do you care?" she typed, her vision blurring with unexpected tears. "Because someone should. And your parents clearly don't." The stranger in the shadows across the city in a penthouse that overlooked Manhattan like a throne surveying its kingdom, Dominic Marconi set his phone down and ran a hand through his dark hair. The video had been an accident, he understood that immediately from Mia's panicked messages. In his world, accidents were usually traps, carefully orchestrated scenarios designed to extract information or leverage. Beautiful women didn't accidentally send vulnerable confessionals to dangerous men. Except Mia Thornton had. Dominic had built his empire on reading people, on identifying threats and opportunities with ruthless precision. He'd taken over his family's import-export business at 25 after his father's sudden death, and in the 10 years since, he'd expanded their territory, eliminated rivals, and earned a reputation as someone you didn't cross unless you had a death wish. He didn't do emotional investments. He didn't get curious about random women. He certainly didn't respond to misdirected uploads with encouragement. But something about Mia's video had cracked through his carefully maintained armor. Maybe it was the way she talked about being invisible in her own family. Dominic understood that, being seen only for what you could provide, never for who you actually were. Maybe it was the resilience in her voice even as she catalogued her failures, the stubborn refusal to quit despite 43 rejections. Or maybe it was simply that in 14 minutes and 37 seconds, Mia Thornton had been more genuine than anyone in his world had been in a decade. "We have a problem," his right-hand man, Marcus, said from the doorway, pulling Dominic back to reality. "What kind of problem?" "The Castellano family is making moves on the waterfront properties. They're trying to undercut our shipping routes." Dominic's expression hardened. "Schedule a meeting. Make it clear that's not negotiable territory." Marcus nodded, but his eyes flicked to the phone in Dominic's hand. "Something more interesting than business?" "No," Dominic said, too quickly. "Just handling a situation." "A situation that makes you smile?" Dominic hadn't realized he'd been smiling. He schooled his features back into neutrality. "Don't you have territorial disputes to manage?" After Marcus left, Dominic pulled up Mia's contact information. He'd had his tech specialist run a background check within minutes of receiving the video, standard security protocol. Mia Thornton, 22, degree in graphic design from a mid-tier state university. No criminal record, no connections to rival families, no red flags except the mountain of student debt and the soul-crushing job search. She was nobody, in the language of his world. A civilian with no power, no leverage, no danger. Which made his interest in her even more inexplicable. He typed another message, "Are you still looking for design work?" Her response came after a long pause, "Why? Are you hiring?" "I own several businesses that need rebranding. I could use a designer who sees value in persistence." "Is this pity?" "This is business." I don't make offers out of pity, Mia. I make them when I see potential. Another long pause. Then, what kind of businesses? Dominic smiled again, a rare expression that would have shocked anyone who knew him. The legitimate kind. Restaurants, real estate, import ventures. Nothing that would compromise your principles. The lie was smooth, practiced. His restaurants were legitimate, they were also perfect fronts for money laundering. His real estate holdings were legal, they also provided warehouses for product storage. His import business had the appropriate licenses, and also brought in goods that customs never inspected too closely. But Mia didn't need to know that. Not yet. I need to think about it, she finally replied. Take your time. The offer stands. What Dominic didn't tell her, he'd already decided she was going to work for him. The only question was whether she'd come willingly or whether he'd have to be more creative about the opportunity. Because in the 10 years since he'd taken over his family's empire, Dominic Marconi had learned one fundamental truth: when you wanted something, you took it. Carefully, strategically, but inevitably. And he wanted to know more about Mia Thornton. The offer she couldn't refuse. Mia didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at her phone, rereading the conversation with D. Marconi at least 30 times. A job offer. From a complete stranger who'd accidentally witnessed her emotional breakdown. It was suspicious. It was probably too good to be true. It was definitely something she should run away from at maximum speed. But it was also the first actual opportunity she'd had in 6 months of soul-crushing rejection. By morning, she'd made a decision. She'd research this D. Marconi person, figure out exactly who he was and what his businesses entailed, and then make an informed choice like the responsible adult she was pretending to be. Except Google had other plans. Dominic Marconi returned approximately 7 million results, and the first page made Mia's stomach drop. New York business elite, the Marconi Empire real estate mogul Dominic Marconi expands Manhattan holdings. The mysterious Mr. Marconi, power player or something more? The photos showed a man in his mid-30s, devastatingly handsome in that dangerous way that should have come with warning labels. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that looked like they could see through corporate lies and personal deceptions with equal precision. But it was the articles beneath the surface-level business coverage that made Mia's hands shake. Alleged connections to organized crime: Marconi family, business dynasty or criminal enterprise? Sources close to investigation say. She was about to close her laptop when a message popped up. Found the Google results, I assume? Mia typed back with trembling fingers, you're in the Mafia. I'm a businessman with family legacy complications. There's a difference. The articles say alleged and sources claim because they have no actual proof. I own legitimate businesses, Mia. What my father and grandfather did before me isn't something I can erase, but it's also not something I'm actively continuing. Mia wanted to believe him. The reasonable part of her brain was screaming that this was red flag territory, that she should block his number and pretend this entire situation had never happened. But the desperate part, the part that was tired of rejection, tired of being invisible, tired of proving her worth to people who'd already decided she had none, that part whispered, what if he's telling the truth? What if this is your chance? If I say yes, she typed slowly, what exactly would I be designing? Restaurant menus, property brochures, website redesigns. Standard corporate identity work. You'd have creative freedom, a proper contract, and payment that reflects your actual skills rather than your desperation. How much? The number he sent made Mia choke on her coffee. It was more than she'd expected to earn in her first year of work, offered for what he was describing as part-time contract work. That's too much, she wrote. That's market rate for quality design work in New York. You've been applying to companies that want to exploit recent graduates. I'm offering fair compensation. Why me? You could hire any designer in the city. Because you're hungry for the opportunity. Because you'll work harder than someone who's already comfortable. And because There was a long pause before the next message arrived. Because I respect people who keep fighting even when the world tells them to quit. Mia stared at the screen, her heart doing complicated gymnastics in her chest. She thought about rejection 43. About her parents' empty chairs at graduation. About the student loan payment due in 5 days that she couldn't afford. She thought about the voice in her video, raw, honest, refusing to give up despite everything. When do I start? She typed before she could talk herself out of it. The response was immediate, tomorrow. I'll send a car at 10 a.m. Dress professionally, bring your portfolio, and Mia? Yes? Thank you for trusting me. The car that arrived the next morning was exactly what Mia should have expected, sleek, black, expensive enough to cost more than her entire year's salary. The driver was professional and silent, holding the door open like she was someone important rather than a broke recent graduate drowning in debt. The building they pulled up to was in Manhattan's financial district, all glass and steel and the kind of architectural statement that screamed money. Mia clutched her portfolio bag like a shield as she walked through the lobby, her reflection in the polished marble floors showing a young woman who was trying very hard to look confident and probably failing spectacularly. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office that belonged in an interior design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her car. Art on the walls that she recognized from her art history classes, originals, not prints. And standing by those windows, backlit by morning sun like some kind of corporate deity, was Dominic Marconi. The photos hadn't done him justice. He turned as she entered, and Mia's breath caught. He was tall, at least 6'2", with the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. His suit was custom-tailored, his dark hair styled with deliberate casualness, and his eyes, those eyes were exactly as intense as she'd feared, seeing through her professional veneer to the nervous, desperate woman underneath. Mia, he said, and his voice was deeper than she'd imagined, warm and commanding simultaneously. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words slipped out before she could stop them. He smiled, a slow curve of his mouth that was probably illegal in several states. There's always a choice. You chose to get in the car. That took courage. Or stupidity. I'm still deciding which. His laugh was genuine, surprised. Most people don't have the nerve to be honest with me. Maybe I'm not most people. I'm counting on that. He gestured to the seating area, 2 leather chairs positioned around a glass coffee table. Mia sat, hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. Dominic sat across from her, close enough that she could see the exact shade of his eyes, dark brown with flecks of amber that caught the light. I want to be transparent with you, he said. About who I am and what working with me entails. Okay. Her voice was steadier than she felt. My family has a complicated history. My father and grandfather were involved in businesses that weren't entirely legal. I've spent the past 10 years legitimizing our operations, but the reputation remains. People assume things about me, some true, most exaggerated. And the true parts? I'm extremely protective of my interests. I don't tolerate betrayal. And I've made enemies who would love to use anyone close to me as leverage. Mia's stomach clenched. You're saying working for you is dangerous. I'm saying working for me comes with security measures. You'll have a driver for business meetings. Your contact information will be protected. If anyone approaches you asking questions about me or my businesses, you'll have protocols to follow. That sounds like more than just design work. It is. Which is why I'm offering compensation that reflects the complete scope of the position. He leaned forward slightly. But I need to know you understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't just about creating beautiful menus, Mia. It's about becoming part of my world, even peripherally. And my world isn't always safe. The reasonable part of her brain was screaming again. Run. This is insane. You're going to end up in a crime documentary. But Dominic was looking at her with something that felt like respect, like he was giving her all the information and trusting her to make an adult decision. Nobody in her life had ever treated her like that, like her choices mattered, like her intelligence was valuable. "If I say yes," she said carefully, "I want creative control over the designs. No interference, no make it more like this other thing. You hired me for my vision, so you have to trust it." His eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. "Agreed. And I want a contract that clearly outlines what's expected. Hours, deliverables, payment schedule. Everything transparent. My lawyer will have it to you by tomorrow. And if I decide this isn't working, if I feel unsafe or compromised, I can walk away. No questions, no consequences." Dominic extended his hand across the table. "You have my word." Mia looked at his hand, strong, scarred slightly across the knuckles, belonging to a man who was probably more dangerous than her limited life experience could fully comprehend. Then she thought about rejection 43. About her parents' empty chairs. About the woman in that video who'd refused to quit. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and when his thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so brief she might have imagined it, electricity shot up her arm. "Welcome to the team, Mia," he said quietly. "I think you're going to surprise yourself with what you're capable of." The world she never knew the first week was a crash course in how Dominic Marconi operated. Mia worked from a small office on the same floor as his penthouse, beautifully appointed, equipped with the latest design software, and apparently soundproofed, which she tried not to think about too hard. The work itself was exactly what he'd promised: restaurant branding for a new Italian place in Brooklyn, property brochures for luxury condos in Manhattan, a website redesign for his import business. Everything was legitimate. Professional. Normal. Except for the moments when it absolutely wasn't. Like when she was presenting menu concepts and a man in an expensive suit walked into Dominic's office without knocking, said, "We have a situation with this shipment," and Dominic's entire demeanor shifted from business professional to something cold and lethal in a heartbeat. "Handle it," Dominic said, his voice dropping several degrees in temperature. "Use the secondary route. And make sure Castellano's people understand that interference has consequences." The man nodded and left. Dominic turned back to Mia, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "You were saying about the font choice?" Mia swallowed hard. That sounded like more than a late delivery. It was a scheduling conflict. "Nothing that concerns you." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. Or like when Marcus, who she'd learned was Dominic's head of security and closest advisor, pulled her aside after a meeting and said quietly, "Don't use the east elevator this afternoon. Maintenance issues." Except Mia had looked out the window an hour later and seen two men being escorted out of the building by security, both looking considerably worse for wear than when they'd arrived. Not maintenance issues. But despite the occasional glimpses into whatever Dominic's real business entailed, Mia found herself enjoying the work. For the first time since graduation, she was using her actual skills. Creating designs that people, important people, took seriously. Dominic reviewed every concept she presented with genuine attention, asked intelligent questions, and trusted her judgment on creative decisions. He was demanding but fair. Intimidating but surprisingly approachable. And occasionally, when she made him laugh with some sarcastic comment, his entire face transformed into something almost boyish. It was dangerous territory. "You're playing with fire," Maya said over video chat during Mia's second week. Maya had finally returned from Paris and was thoroughly unconvinced that Mia's new job was a good idea. "I'm designing restaurant menus, not running drugs." For a man who probably does run drugs. Or worse. "He's been nothing but professional with me." Mia. Maya's expression was serious. "I love you. But you have a habit of seeing the best in people who don't deserve it. Remember Trevor?" "Trevor. The ex-boyfriend who'd borrowed $2,000 for emergency car repairs and then disappeared for 3 months. Point taken. This is different, Mia insisted. Dominic is Dominic? You're on a first-name basis with the mob boss? He's not a mob boss. He's a businessman with a complicated family history. That's literally what all mob bosses say. But Maya didn't understand what it felt like to finally be seen. To have someone look at your work and say, "This is exactly what I needed," instead of, "Can you make it more generic?" She didn't understand what it felt like when Dominic brought her coffee during late-night work sessions, somehow knowing she took it with oat milk and 1 sugar without her ever telling him. Or when he'd noticed her rubbing her neck after hours at the computer and had an ergonomic chair delivered to her apartment the next day. Or when her parents had called, their first contact in 6 months, and she'd answered in his office, only to have the conversation devolve into another litany of disappointment. When she'd hung up, fighting tears, Dominic had simply said, "Take the rest of the day. Family calls are always harder than we expect." No pity. No intrusive questions. Just understanding. "You're falling for him," Maya said, reading her expression through the screen. "I'm not, Mia. I've known you since freshman orientation. I can tell when you're catching feelings. And this is a really, really bad idea." Maybe it was. Probably it was. But when Dominic knocked on her office door that afternoon, holding 2 containers of Thai food and saying, "You've been working for 6 hours straight. Mandatory dinner break," Mia couldn't bring herself to care about bad ideas. They ate in his office, the city lights glittering outside the windows like fallen stars. "Can I ask you something?" Mia said, halfway through her pad thai. "You can always ask. I might not always answer. Why did you really offer me this job?" "The truth." Dominic set down his fork, studying her with those intense eyes. "The truth is that your video reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What?" "That success isn't about never falling. It's about getting up every time you do." He paused. "My sister used to say that. Before she died." The grief in his voice was raw, unexpected. "I'm sorry," Mia said softly. She was 24. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. His jaw tightened. She was going to be a doctor. Had her whole life planned out. And then she was just gone. How long ago? 3 years. And I still sometimes turn to tell her something before I remember." He looked at Mia then, something vulnerable in his expression. "Your video, the way you kept talking about not giving up even when everything seemed impossible, that's exactly how Sophia used to think. Resilient. Stubborn. Refusing to let the world break her. And you hired me because I reminded you of her? I hired you because you deserved a chance. But I kept you because you're exactly as talented as I thought you'd be." His smile was soft. "The resemblance to my sister is just a bonus that makes me believe in fate occasionally." Mia's heart did that complicated thing again, expanding and contracting simultaneously. "Thank you," she said. "For the opportunity. For trusting me. For seeing me. Mia." His voice dropped lower. "You're pretty impossible not to see." The moment stretched between them, loaded with things neither was quite ready to say. Then Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. "Boss. We have a problem." Dominic's transformation was instant, back to business, back to danger. "What kind of problem?" "The Castellano kind. They just acquired the property adjacent to the Brooklyn restaurant. They're planning something." Dominic stood, his entire body tense. "Lockdown protocol." "Mia, you're staying here tonight." "What?" "No, this isn't negotiable." His voice was pure command. "Marcus, arrange a secure room. And get me everything we have on Castellano's recent acquisitions." As Marcus hurried away, Dominic turned back to Mia. His expression softened marginally. I'm sorry. But until I know what they're planning, I can't risk you being exposed. Exposed to what? To being used as leverage against me. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I don't understand, Mia said slowly. Why would I be leverage? I'm just your designer. Dominic's laugh was harsh. Mia. You've been working here for 2 weeks. My enemies already know your name, your schedule, probably your favorite coffee order. They're looking for weaknesses. And you, he stopped, running a hand through his hair. You're becoming one. A weakness? Someone I care about protecting. Which makes you a target. The admission hit her like physical force. Dominic, I should have been more careful. Should have kept more distance. But he cut himself off, jaw clenched. We'll discuss this later. Right now, I need you safe. The secure room turned out to be a guest suite in the penthouse, luxurious, comfortable, and definitely locked from the outside. Mia spent the next 4 hours pacing, listening to muffled voices through the walls, trying not to imagine what handling the Castellano problem actually entailed. Around midnight, the door opened. Dominic stood there, looking exhausted, his tie loosened and his shirt sleeves rolled up. It's handled, he said simply. What does that mean? It means you're safe. They've been discouraged from further action. Mia didn't ask for details. Can I go home now? Tomorrow. It's late, and I'd feel better if you stayed tonight. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Mia, we need to talk about this situation. About me being a weakness? About me caring whether you're safe. He moved closer, and Mia's breath hitched. This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to be just a designer, someone I helped out of professional respect. But somewhere between the Thai food dinners and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, it became something else. What else? Her voice was barely a whisper. Something dangerous. Something I have no business feeling for someone like you. Someone like me? Someone good. Someone who deserves better than getting tangled up in my world. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. But I'm too selfish to let you go. Mia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. What if I don't want to go? Then you're braver than I gave you credit for. His thumb traced her lower lip. Or more foolish. Maybe both. He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, when she leaned into him instead, the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea. I've been having a lot of those lately. His laugh was warm against her skin. If you stay in my world, Mia, things are going to get complicated. Dangerous. My enemies won't care that you're innocent. They'll see you as a target. Then protect me. I will. With everything I have. His arms tightened around her. But you need to understand what that means. Security details. Protocols. Limited freedom. It's not a normal life. My normal life was rejection emails and parental disappointment. I think I can handle complicated. He pulled back slightly, studying her face. You're sure? Mia thought about the video that had started everything, her vulnerable confession to an empty camera. She thought about 43 rejections and empty graduation chairs and 6 months of being invisible. And she thought about the man in front of her, who'd seen her at her lowest and offered opportunity instead of pity. Who made her laugh and challenged her creativity and looked at her like she was the most important person in any room. I'm sure, she said. Dominic's smile was devastating. Then welcome to my world, Mia Thornton. Try not to let it destroy you. The price of protection the next 3 months were a study in contrasts. Professionally, Mia thrived. Her designs were featured in design blogs, her restaurant branding won local awards, and Dominic's businesses flourished with her creative direction. Personally, things were more complicated. Dating a man like Dominic Marconi came with rules: never go anywhere without her assigned security detail. Never discuss his business with outsiders. Never, ever answer questions from journalists or investigators. The security detail, a rotation of professional, silent men who stayed exactly 10 feet away at all times, took some getting used to. But after the third time someone tried to follow